Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for talking to Newsnight. Last night, President Trump dismissed the idea that President Zelensky was being sidelined in the talks about its future, and he said, quote, "Well, you've been there for 3 years, you should have ended it. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal." Obviously, it was Russia who started it. When you hear the President of the United States making claims like that, what do you think?
Well, first what I think is that while I have read today's morning newspapers, I find that the British establishment is now in a state of shock and nervousness of what has happened. But what has happened, in fact, in reality, this is a more understanding from the American side of what we are doing, why we are doing, and what should be the outcome of it. As for the particular statement on President Zelensky, there is first an obstacle for the negotiations because he has issued an executive order to prohibit himself for the negotiations. And until he is going to remove that, all negotiations on that side seems to be illegal.
So when you say you think the US administration has more of an understanding of your position, do you think they genuinely believe that Ukraine started the war?
Well, that's a fact of life. The war has not started 3 years ago. The war has started after the coup d'etat by so-called Maidan in Kiev, which has brought nationalists to power. And the first decree by this nationalist was prohibition of the Russian language, with which the part of Ukrainian population disagree.
I mean, it's not a fact of life. The fact is it was Russia's military aggression in 2014.
In 2014.
With Moscow's forced annexation of Crimea.
In 2014, in fact, I hope that in BBC they better learn history. That was a decree on the prohibition of the Russian language. The part of Ukrainian population in the east disagree with that, and Ukrainian government has sent troops to this eastern part, that was at the start of the conflict.
The night before America's top diplomat sat down for those historic talks with your foreign affairs minister, Russia killed an 80-year-old man in the Zaporizhia region, 80 years old. The night immediately after the meeting, last night, there was a Russian drone attack on Odessa. The mayor of Odessa said it damaged and knocked out the heating in 14 schools and 13 kindergartens.
Okay, good.
Civilians and civilian infrastructure, not military targets. I wanted to ask you, are you surprised the US didn't ask Russia to stop those attacks as a condition of the meeting yesterday?
I'm surprised that still the BBC and others do not pay attention to the Russian civilians being killed simultaneously at the same time on the other side of this conflict. You should take into account what kind of atrocities has been done by Kiev soldiers in different villages that has been, in the field of the battle, I will say. So it should be unbiased attitude towards what's going on over there.
I'm asking you about those Russian attacks which have continued.
We have established a tribunal for all crimes that are being done by Ukrainian soldiers. This tribunal functions, and not only Ukrainian soldiers, but many mercenaries are over there, including British.
But I'm asking you about the Russian attacks and the fact that Russia was at the meeting yesterday and there was no requirement on you to stop those attacks. What did you think of that?
Well, I will say to you that, in fact, 3 years ago, Mr. Borrell from the European Union said that this conflict should be resolved on the battlefield. And what is going on right now, it is being resolved on the battlefield, and Ukraine is losing it quickly, together with the countries that are supporting it, including London.
I was asking about Russian attacks. Our audience will notice that every time I do, you talk about Ukrainians. Can I ask you about something that Marco Rubio said after that meeting yesterday? The US Secretary of State said, in order to bring an end to any conflict, there has to be concessions made by all sides. Will Russia compromise?
It is difficult to say. What has happened yesterday, it has had three outcomes. First and foremost, it was re-establishment of contacts and diplomacy with the United States, which is a precondition for everything else. Second is that they have launched a process, I will say, on Ukrainian settlement. Which can, it is very initial phase, what to do with that. And third, that both sides has agreed that we need full-scale relationship between the United States and Russia. All three outcomes are incredibly important for all of that. As for the process, as it is in a very initial phase right now. So it is premature to speak about concessions or kind of agreements or what kind of framework it will come. But I hope that after the teams will be established from both sides, from Russian side and from American side, we will have a certain framework which allow further steps.
I understand, but going on what Marco Rubio said, there has to be concessions made by all sides. I'm not asking you what concessions. I'm just asking for an insight, an indication. Is Russia prepared to compromise?
It is just funny to speak about concessions in the negotiations which did not start it yet.
No, indeed. But Marco Rubio is already declaring that concessions will have to be made by.
It's up to him.
By everyone.
Just to declare something. It is.
What about giving back Ukraine some of its territory?
Why should we? We have liberated these territories on which Russian people are living for centuries, actually. We suggested to Ukrainians several compromises in the course of the last 10 years, I will say. Minsk agreement, then Minsk II agreement. All the time we try to negotiate with them. Minsk II consisted, in fact, I'm not sure that everybody knows that Donbass will be part of Ukraine. Autonomous with some special rules, but it should be part of Ukraine. It has been rejected now. And slowly we have moved to the point where we have come to that in 2022.
When you say, why should we give back some of Ukraine's territory, the answer from Ukrainians might be because it's Ukrainian territory. That's why Russia should give it back.
We suggested, should I repeat what I have said? I don't think so. We have suggested many times that they should just care of the human rights over there, of normal human rights like it exists in Europe. That Russians should be full-scale Russians and Russian-speaking population should be a full-scale, a normal part of Ukrainian society without prohibiting Russian language and all of that stuff. So, which has concluded without prohibiting Orthodox Church, normal Orthodox Church, without trying to substitute it with something else. So there are criteria even in the United Nations how to recognize, but it is clear that the current government in Kyiv does not represent the whole Ukrainian society, the whole Ukrainian population. It does not represent eastern population of Ukraine.
I've interviewed some Ukrainians in the east of the country in the last 3 years. They grew up speaking Russian. They regarded Russians as their brothers, and they have had to flee because of Russian attacks on them.
No, so what's the matter, I will say, because yes, of course, when there are battles, when there are clashes over there, it is clear that the population is going to flee. And I will say that we even helped many Eastern Ukrainians to move into Russia. They did. We have right now about 6 million of something of refugees. And right now they are going back in Mariupol. If I'm not mistaken, there are hundreds of thousands of those who has come back, because Mariupol has been is under restoration right now, the demolishing. We are also empowering a lot of money in restoring villages and cities and towns that has been under battle, demolished, unfortunately.
Demolished by Russians?
Demolished in the course of a battle, because Ukrainians are very severe in targeting civil targets.
Sorry, Ukrainians have been targeting civil targets?
Certainly, yes. You do not know about that. If you have been over there, when there is a battle, we are trying to reach military infrastructure of Ukraine. Ukrainians are acting differently, so they are sometimes targeting, not sometimes, but at many occasions, they are targeting buildings just.
I will come back to the targeting of certain buildings in a moment or two, if I may. How does Moscow view the prospect of tens of thousands of European and non-European troops along the front line?
No, our attitude will be negative to that. I don't think that it will not be part of the deal, because if Europeans are going to install certain contingents of the Ukrainian soil, it means that they're going to construct bases and infrastructure, which does not deviate from NATO being on the territory of Ukraine.
But President Trump said last night he was fine with troops from other countries being positioned in Ukraine.
No, I don't believe that they did not discuss. They did discuss it in the course of the session of Riyadh, because for instance, London's concept of boots on the land changes every day. Yesterday it was a typhoon, aircrafts policing Ukraine. The day before yesterday it was some contingent. Then it was a contingent with reinforcement from the United States. So we do not see the clear concept of it.
Sure,
and
not yet, no.
But in any case,
I'm just giving you the quote from President Trump. The word he used was, he's fine. He's fine with troops from other countries.
He might be fine, but I can assure you that we will disagree, and we will not accept presence of military contingents from other countries of Europe who are members of NATO on the soil of Ukraine.
So what would without that, of course, Russia could come back to Ukraine?
No. What we are looking for, it is not a temporary ceasefire, it is not a truce, it is overall settlement. Overall settlement that should include Ukraine, countries in Europe, United States, and all the others. In the framework of such an overall settlement, of course, it will be guarantees. And in fact, it has nothing to do for what the troops will be doing then, or they're just standing and looking at it, because they have no rules of engagement. They cannot engage anything. So I do not see the role. And otherwise, of course, we are not going to accept British troops on the Ukrainian soil.
But if Ukrainians want British troops on Ukrainian soil, it's up to them, isn't it?
In any case, it will be a sort of a treaty or a deal or a negotiated settlement. And every element of this, every presence during which stems from a treaty or an accord, it should be agreed by both sides. It would be agreed by us as well.
Could one of Russia's demands be that President Zelensky stands down as a condition of peace and elections are held in Ukraine?
None of our leaders has said that so far, but we believe that since his legitimacy has come to an end May last year, he should have elections, since we do not see how we can negotiate with him something. Because if he will put his signature under any kind of agreement, and tomorrow he will not be elected as the president, so this piece of paper will have not much of value. But we can go into negotiations with him if there is no other way. But for us, it is, I would say, the value of such kind of negotiations. So of course, it's not 100% necessary.
Right, but he is the president. He was democratically elected. You know there's martial law in Ukraine because Russia launched its full-scale invasion. That's why elections are on hold.
Anyway, I think it is a big demand also from the Americans that Ukrainian population should express its will, who should be the leader of Ukraine. And I'm not sure it will be Zelensky.
So President Putin and President Trump, you think, are united on that point?
I heard what President Trump has said yesterday, and actually what has said President Putin as well some time ago.
What does President Putin mean when he says the causes of the war have to be addressed in any peace agreement?
Yeah, that's right. It is causes of the war are very clear, and we know that. First there are two basic root causes of the war. One is the expansion of NATO, to which we objected many years, and tell that it is not acceptable for us at all that Ukraine and countries very close to our border will be part of it. And second, that it should be a restoration of normal human rights in Ukraine, no discrimination for Russian, as I have already expressed in my previous answers. The second is the issue of human rights. in Ukraine of the Russian-speaking population and other minorities.
In terms of NATO expansion, obviously Finland and Sweden have joined NATO since the full-scale invasion. So that desire of President Putin's that NATO shouldn't expand to countries bordering Russia, it's dead in the water.
No. Finland and Sweden, it is not very scaring for us, but since they for many years they trained with NATO, acted with NATO together on very many issues. We, of course, it is very detrimental for Finland since it has lost its neutrality status and a status mediator, which has contained many years. As for Ukraine, it is different. It is a direct challenge to our security interests.
Does Russia accept that however this war ends, whatever is agreed about territory, Ukraine will remain a sovereign and independent state?
I think the answer is positive to your question. We understand that Ukraine, and we never denied that Ukraine should exist. Of course, we have very many contradictions right now with Ukraine, but it is, well, we will see what will be the outcome, but we value and we respect very much Ukrainian people and population. The problem is the government.
If you value and respect Ukrainian people, why have you killed so many of them?
Because of regime which is now in power right now. It has ideology which is absolutely anti-Russian, and it is very nationalistic, and it is between nationalism and fascism. The line is very thin.
It doesn't make sense. If you've got a problem with President Zelensky, why would you kill innocent Ukrainians?
President Zelensky has come to power and got a support from all Ukrainians as a president of peace. He said that he will make, while being elected, he has said he will make a peace with Russia very quickly. But then it appeared that he started a war, and he is now leading the war very seriously.
He didn't start a war.
Good to hear from you. I just explained how it has started, and you tried to say that.
Why is that funny?
Because it is like you listen, but you do not hear. This is what has happened before with the Americans. And in Riyadh, it is for the first time we have noticed that they are not simply saying that this is Russian propaganda and disinformation. They have listened and they hear what we say. And from you, it is all the same.
Right. So they listen, and if somebody agrees with you, that means they've listened and heard.
They heard, yes, they heard and they understand what we are saying.
Can I ask you to be really clear on this? Does President Putin want to take the whole of Ukraine still?
I never heard that. I have never heard that from President Putin. There are four provinces or whatever you can, regions that has been incorporated in our constitutions, which are mainly populated by Russians. So that's these territories are now part of our constitution, and what he is saying, he sticks to this point.
Right. The reason I ask that is because in 2022, President Putin told the Russian people, it is now our responsibility to return Russian land. What does that mean? What did he mean?
I just answered your question.
Is that it? Is that what he meant?
I do not know what will be the final outcome of these very big talks in it. I cannot predict right now.
Okay. When he talks about returning Russian land, what do you say to the people of Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, who might be worried about their sovereignty?
They are worried all the times during very many years, but I guess there is no point. We have no ideas and no plans at all to fight against NATO. All these ideas that we have some plans in 5 or 7 years to attack NATO, it is said by silly people who just want to have more money for defense, like Pistorius in his yesterday's article, but all of this is nonsense.
I remember you telling my colleague on Newsnight in January 2022 that the Russian troops in Belarus would not be going into Ukraine, they'd be going back to Russia. And of course, weeks later, Russia launched its full-scale invasion. Do you think people should believe you?
Victoria, I have answered this question very many times after 22 and all of that stuff. Every interviewer tried to ask me. I have said at that time what I have known at that time. That is all.
Will Russia pay for the reconstruction of Ukraine?
I'm sure that we are paying right now and quite a lot for reconstruction of parts that we have liberated.
Do you know how many Russians have been killed in this war?
No, I do not know. And I can tell you absolutely sincerely that the real ciphers are known only to the general staff of Moscow, in Moscow.
There are estimates, for example, the US estimated that 115,000 Russian troops have been killed with 500,000 injured.
We discussed it before, and the answer is that all the ciphers has been taken from the ceilings. From the sky, I would say. The real ciphers are known only to those who are in command.
Okay. What I was going to ask you, what message do you have for their mothers and fathers?
For whom?
For the mothers and fathers of the dead Russian soldiers.
I'm a political man, actually. I'm ambassador in this country. I have a message for the British government that it should actually understand the real situation as soon as possible and not to trying to prolong sufferings in Ukraine. Because since for the British government it's much more important not to provide more weapons, but to think how to restore Ukraine after what has happened.
So you're calling on the UK government and the UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer to stop giving military aid to Ukraine?
I call the UK government to recognize that the course and the policy that it has followed in the recent years was wrong.
But he said on Monday, Ukraine's security is Europe's security. That's why the UK has been supporting Ukraine.
Ukraine's security is Ukraine's security, and Europe decided to take a one-sided line of it, and this is a wrong line.
Do you know how many Ukrainians have been killed in this war?
No, there are ciphers that are going in the newspapers, but I'm not trying to estimate, since it is also to Ukrainian general staff to understand what they are doing and to understand what are the losses.
President Zelensky said 46,000 Ukrainian soldiers.
This is a funny cipher. This cannot be. It is just no serious source believes into this cipher. It is.
Right. I'm just telling you what he said. He said.
I know. Well, of course, I know what he has said.
46,000 Ukrainian soldiers, and the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights said 12,500 civilians had been killed. And again, I want to ask you, Russia bombed a theatre in Mariupol, a train station in Kramatorsk, a pizza restaurant in Kramatorsk, a shopping mall in Kremenchuk, a children's hospital in Kyiv. Civilian targets.
Victoria, I think we have already gone through these questions. Why are you repeating them?
Because I'm putting to you that they're civilian targets.
No, these are not civilian targets. The pizza that you have mentioned has been attached to the hotel, which was full of soldiers, officers, especially from the NATO countries, and all of that stuff. It is just one example. This is sufficient. We do not target civilians. We are targeting only Ukrainian military infrastructure, including into energy.
Right. So there were soldiers in the children's hospital, in the shopping mall?
No, of course it is. Everybody is saying that the church was near here, and it is usual stuff which is being invented after a certain attack.
Okay, it's not invented. Our Middle East editor, Jeremy Bowen, is in Sumy right now, and he has seen a high-rise block of flats where families live, and he said there's a great big hole in the side of it, 3 stories high, and people were killed there. They're not soldiers.
Victoria, if you are aware, interviewed some people, the Donetsk has been shelled during 9 years. 9 years of everyday shelling, Donetsk itself. And even generation of people, a new generation of people has grown up under shells. And there are lots of buildings demolished. I would very much advise to you to go to Donetsk and to see its site and to listen to what people are saying.
President Zelensky said after yesterday's Saudi meeting that Russia is run by pathological liars. It's something the now US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, tweeted a few weeks after you launched the full-scale invasion. This was back in March 2022 when Marco Rubio was a senator. He wrote this: "Many in the West still don't understand that Putin is an expert liar." Are President Zelensky and Marco Rubio right?
Actually, if you want to insult our leader, then we do not have much to talk with you about it. I have heard a lot of...
I'm quoting other people I haven't insulted.
Yes, you may quote also your Minister Lamy, who is trying to, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Lamy, who is trying to insult our leaders and our country very many times in the recent weeks and months when he has come to power. I don't think that we will be interested, in fact, to talk or to think that London can play any role in this.
Any role in what, sorry?
In that settlement or the processes that are going on.
Right. And to come back to what Marco Rubio said in 2022 and what President Zelensky said yesterday, is President Putin a liar? Can Donald Trump trust him?
Well, we do not take any position on President Zelensky's statements. He does it every time and everywhere. He's the biggest liar in the world, and as has been claimed by the President Trump as well, of course. He is only seeking for money and all of that. He doesn't care about Ukrainians themselves if he has introduced them into such a battle. So question is to him.
And Marco Rubio, who's right at the center of these negotiations.
No, ask Marco Rubio or ask Americans. Why do you ask me?
I'm asking you, can President Trump trust President Putin?
Marco Rubio has, during these talks and negotiations, they were very polite, I will say, very diplomatic, and of course, issues are very serious. I will tell you about the telephone conversations initially. It's a conversation between two states figures, two ministers, real diplomatic, and what has happened in Riyadh, that was not bad, it was good, and it was a mutual understanding. And as I understand also from the statements by President Putin, he never comes to the expressions like you have mentioned in your script over there. He's a very polite personality, very serious personality. He has a strategic vision, and probably here he is polite to President Trump. And I understand he respects President Trump for his courage, for his courage everywhere, including his handling right now the policy in Washington, his courage during the election campaign when someone has tried to kill him and all over. And I think from this mutual respect, that is clever, something, I wouldn't predict what, but something something will rise beneficial for the whole world and especially Europe as well.
In what way, especially for Europe as well? What do you mean? What will be beneficial?
We need security in long we need a serious, overwhelming agreement on European security, for which we fought since '75, and we achieved something quite a lot in the '90s, but then it has gone down in the recent years because of blindness of Bush administration, absolutely, because NATO countries, including London, are trying to push Ukraine to make a breakthrough instrument against Russia, to demolish Russia, to defeat Russia, and I hear even this morning slogans that they will continue. This is certain inertia, of course, in thinking, but it continues, and it proves to be wrong.
And to come back finally to the question that I've asked a couple of times, can President Trump trust President Putin?
Well, they do have trust already in between them, and they stated they talked. Of course, it was a long telephone conversation. How this telephone conversation could have happened without mutual trust?
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for talking to Newsnight.
Okay, thank you.